welcome to week 13 of Knowing Jesus.
Right.
Deep dives. We are in a different space than we normally are.
Yeah, but I'm liking this is a space becoming something. So stay tuned because this space will be some.
It's already not yet. We're using it, but it's not yet fully.
And we're not telling you where we are. You
you gotta find it.
You have to guess. So leave your guess comments.
We're in the basement. That's where we are.
Calvary's basement.
Yes, the biggest
secret of Calvary.
Yeah. Anyway, we are still in our Knowing Jesus series.
Yeah.
Looking at the life of Christ from his all the way from before his birth to through death, resurrection, ascension. We have kind of moved into the third sub-series. We went from kind of preparation time to looking at some of the different encounters, and now we're looking at different miracles that Jesus performs as we see him restoring the natural order, the fallen order of creation. Right. And in today's story, we're going to be looking at how Jesus he's doing something for the first time.
The very first time, yes.
He is going to raise someone from the dead. Which again is, you grow up with, talking about the Bible, talking about Bible stories, and it's like, okay, David and Goliath, and Jesus walking on water, and Jesus he's raising someone from the dead, and I feel like for whatever reason we don't talk about these stories.
That's a great passage that we skip over, and we're going to look at the second example. I think we'll cover all three of them because we'll get to Lazarus a little bit later. But yeah, these are all, we were talking in our teaching team, these are signs that point us to Jesus, and these are signs that cause us to want to dig deeper into the mystery and understanding of who Jesus is and invites us in to know him more. Who is this guy that has power over life? And that's, looking at these miracles, power over sickness, power over, the Sabbath, kind of, power over, rules and rituals. And here he has power over life. He's restoring that. Next week will be power over nature, but power over life. And not many happen. I mean, I think about 7 times someone comes back from the dead in all of the couple thousand years of scriptural kind of history that's there.
Yeah, it's cool. So we'll be in Luke chapter 7. We'll kind of go maybe verse by verse.
Luke 7:11. You can remember.
7:11.
There's not many 7:11s. So
yes, that's good. Luke chapter 7, verse 11. And I'm just going to start reading. We'll stop, kind of maybe take some breaks, ask some questions, look at some different words. But here it says, soon afterward.
Yeah, so there we go.
So after
what was happening? I love how they're always connecting things. So this story, which we said follows the healing of the centurion's son. And I think we talked earlier about, Jesus was amazed at this. He was amazed at the centurion's faith. He was probably a pagan who was not part of the religious establishment, but obviously heard about Jesus. And, had someone close that was sick and begs, like, Jesus, you can do, say the words and it will be done. And so you have, a contrast, someone desperate for Jesus and going, and then Jesus meets someone, doesn't even ask, may not even know who he is, comes in.
Yeah, that's a great comparison there.
So you have this crowd then, this great crowd who are celebrating healing and wholeness and life and the fruitfulness of what Jesus can do. And sometimes that's who we are. We're that crowd. Yeah. We're the people who are like, we've just seen Jesus do something great in our life.
Yeah, so there's this idea that Jesus has just done this, and that a crowd now is kind of following him to see what's next.
And it says a great crowd. Yeah. So not a small crowd. It says a great crowd. So again, this is kind of the second year of Jesus' ministry. We call it the year of popularity is what it's known, because great crowds are following. Like, what's next? What's going to happen? They can't wait to see.
When I was in seminary, we were translating the book of Jonah. And you see that word great applied there as well. There's different ways we can think about great, right? Great. Is it because it's people and people are valuable? Is it great in number, great in size, great in commotion, great in significance? And I think all of those are probably at play here. There's a lot of people who are just interested in who Jesus is and what he is doing. They want to see what he's going to do.
Right.
And so he went to a town called Nain.
Nain, yes.
Do we know anything about Nain?
Yeah, what is it's a small town, had gates, probably had a city gate, had a sense of identity, but not nearly as big as Capernaum, which was a small town.
Mm-hmm.
What many commentators think is that it's kind of a derivation of Nain, or Nam, and which was Shunam, was a place about in that location, and where in history Elisha had done a very similar miracle.
So Old Testament prophet.
Old Testament prophet, 700 years before, and raised a widow's son. In kind of retrospect of Elijah, his predecessor, who raised the widow of Zarephath's son. Now Zarephath was farther away over, closer to the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
But Elijah was the great prophet of the time, and lots of miracles. You see in the Bible, miracles kind of were clustered around certain time frames when God was doing something. So a lot around Elijah and Elisha. And Elisha asked for a double portion of Elijah's spiritual anointing. And so Elisha does twice the number of miracles. And Elijah raised the widow's son of Zarephath, and then Elisha raises the Shunammite woman's son. And so we think it's probably about the same place. So Jesus is coming intentionally.
Yeah.
He's showing, I am the prophet, I'm the Elisha, I've got the same anointing and more. Elijah said, and Elisha had to pray to God. They're praying to God. God, would you act? And Jesus just speaks to the dead, rise. Right? Jesus doesn't have to pray to anybody. He is God. He just speaks.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? We constantly see Jesus doing this. He's doing something intentionally. He's so intentional with what he does. He does things very purposefully, and I don't think it's lost on him that Elisha has
done
this, and he's doing
in
this
the same place. And you get this, Nain is 25 to 30 miles from Capernaum, a good day's walk on a good day. It is uphill, so some people suggest it would take even longer than a day to get it. But the timing, so it just so happens that as the great crowd is coming in, this great crowd is coming out.
Yeah, so you have this tale of two crowds here. In verse 12, it says, as he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a considerable crowd from the town was with her. So there's a few things that I want to ask you about.
This is a rich verse.
It is. Yeah. It's very, very rich. So I want to go straight to the end of this. A considerable crowd from the town was with her. You have a tale of two crowds. You have a crowd following Jesus. You have a crowd, with this woman, right? What's going on? Like, what's happening?
Well, two very different crowds. I mean, you've got this crowd with Jesus. Jesus just healed someone. They're celebrating. I mean, they can't wait. Jesus is the life giver, healer, miracle worker, teacher. So they're coming. You get the sense that there's exuberance as they're traveling, excitement and joy.
Yeah.
And this crowd is coming out. And obviously, there's a great crowd. This woman, you assume had a lot of friends, was known, had a reputation. And they're coming to bury her son, and probably not a little boy, a teen, maybe in their 20s, kind of a young man.
Described as a man.
Yeah. So, but, I mean, the tragedy upon tragedy for this woman is she's done this before. This is not her first funeral.
Yeah.
She's already lost her husband, and lost the sense of support. Who was going to look after her now? Where's she going to get money? Sometimes the husband's family would come in and take stuff. It was kind of a live by day culture. You ate what you worked that day, which if you go to the developing world, that still happens today. If people aren't working, don't get paid, they probably don't eat, or the family doesn't eat. So how much saving does she have? Does she have any? Who's going to look after her? Which is why the scriptures always talk about the widow and the orphan.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, right? We see the widow and the orphan. We see those two go together. We see
the widow, orphan, and poor.
Yeah,
they're often gone together. They're lumped in together.
Yeah. So why do the scriptures mention widows and orphans and poor so often?
Well, because a widow, there was no Medicare or Social Security, there was no social option for her. She would have to work, and if there's no one to do that, you see in the Old Testament Ruth and Naomi, two widows who had to go and glean grain for themselves, try to find work and eke out an existence, basically. And so the same, and that our responsibility is to bring life and help and hope to those who don't have any other option. Now, in our day, there are other options, but it's what I love particularly about our we have several ministries, the Hammerheads, that help often with widows, single mom, people who need something. We have a widows group. They're a group who just meet for encouragement, support, be able to share their life and experience. A wonderful group, our On Track group, which are single adults, some, widowed and some divorced and some single by choice. And so really caring for those people who really have no one else to care for them. And we're parents, and we have two parents homes. You're trying to raise your kids, and it's hard enough. Imagine being alone, not everybody to bounce ideas or get input and do that. Just the difficulty that God's heart is there to bring justice to a lot of people.
And we see James describes
true religion.
Describes true religion, right? And taking care of the widow and the orphan. And I do think, and this isn't, we've jumped a little bit ahead in the story just from last week, but last week, we talked about ritual, right?
Yes,
and Jesus,
right.
He's doing healing on the Sabbath, and now we're in a story where Jesus is caring, He's helping to provide for a widow, and I can't help but notice that He is constantly trying to show people what true religion is.
Right. And the people are following, right? They're learning. And this is what a disciple follows their rabbi, their teacher follows in the dust, living is close. So, they're learning a lot about what that is. And, Luke was not an apostle. Matthew would have been and seen some of the things. This account is not in Matthew. It's only in Luke. And, Luke had to get it from other people who were there. He talks about eyewitnesses. So some of the other disciples, who else was there. And, so people are obviously remembering this. This stuck with them, that here's Jesus intentionally meets this widow and extravagantly cares for her. That's what He can. I think
He does what He can.
He does what He can. What He can is different than what we can, but we have to do what we can.
Most, for us, it's, okay, can we remember them? Can we, is there money that we can get? Is there food? And Jesus is going to do something that only Jesus can do. In verse 13, when the Lord saw her, He had compassion on her. He said, "Do not weep." So this word compassion, what does that mean?
Well, the Hebrew word is kind of splingazomai, which is a gut feeling. So it comes from the bowels. It really speaks to the bowels. And the Hebrew people, the ancient people, felt that the bowels were the seat of your emotions, not your heart. We now talk about the heart. They talk about in the bowels, because I think sometimes there's that feeling. We talk about the pit of our stomach or what we have. And so there's this taking on, and that's part of compassion, is that someone else's pain really becomes our pain, or we really enter in and try to understand them. And that's what we spent a lot of time this weekend talking about, Jesus seeing, feeling compassion and acting. It's kind of these things that happen. And we, without doing all three, I don't think we bring life. And I think this is, Jesus brings life because He sees, He feels, He acts. We sometimes avoid all three. We don't want to look at people like, my classic, and I'm just as guilty, you are come off the interstate and you're at the off-ramp and there's, people asking for money, and do you stare at them? Do you smile? Do you wave? Or do you look ahead and try not to get eye contact? And I think that's a paradigmatic of the way that we often look at things. We want to look beyond, we want to look away, we don't want to really see. Or if we see, we want to act quickly. We don't want to feel.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, okay, I don't want to really understand them. I don't want to feel. I see them and I want to do something quick. And, you know, we've done that coming out from a ball game downtown, you know, and there's typically people who are asking for money or, you know, asking for some sort of support. And we don't want to really hear their story. We don't want to understand them. We don't want to figure out what got them there. We try to guess, are they sincere or not? So what do? We'll give them a couple bucks and, okay, I feel better, right? I don't want to feel. I feel better.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we've seen them, but we act. True change really helps when we see, we really feel, we take on that, and then we act. And that's how ministries get started. That's how people go back to the same mission year after year after year. That's how mission organizations have started. That's how people develop new hobbies or activities, is there's that real change. And we're afraid, I think, sometimes to do one or that. We're afraid, if I see, it may change my life. If I really feel their pain, it's going to change my life. If I do something. But God, I mean, I think this is what is Jesus modeling to this great crowd, is that we go to people and we go to the city and we can give them the life of Jesus, like the resurrection. We're called now to be bearers of the resurrection power and bring the resurrection light. Jesus, you know, is the light and the life, and we bring that life. That's our call. Who are we? Who needs to be seen and understood and helped? Whatever we can do. We can't raise from the dead, but we can do something.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I love this. Like, Jesus is fully, he's fully human in this moment. Yeah. He's fully present, right? Like, he sees, he sees the woman, right? He feels and he acts like that. That's a great paradigm there, because I think that you're right. It's so easy to see a need and just act to fill it and not to actually enter it and feel
it. Right. In fact, I think, you know, we talk about that. I think sometimes even as a church, we do things to kind of get people through the middle. It's like, okay, here's what you can do. Yeah. And it's like sometimes, oh, okay, well now I feel good because I've done something. But sometimes people want more than that. They want to be understood. And we can sometimes kind of take a shortcut and move people out of that real feeling. Yeah,
and that's the hard part here.
That's the hard part.
Right, the feeling and the empathizing that happens. And he says to her,
yeah, be careful when you say this.
Yes. He says, don't weep.
Don't weep.
Like, stop crying.
Right. Well, I think unless we can really do something to change that. I mean, I think we look at the scripture, and we can't bypass too quickly. This is a grievous situation. I mean, the weightiness of what has happened to this woman. And the Bible does speak about grieving. I think we don't grieve enough. Joseph grieved 70 days for his dad in the book of Genesis. Paul says we grieve, but we grieve differently. We have hope. And so Jesus here, I think, understands grief and enters into that grief. But if he's going to change it, it's different. And I would liken this to my kids. Sometimes my kids are weeping and they've made a mistake or they've done something, a tragedy's happened. They have to grieve that. There are other times they're grieving over something I can fix. Like it's like, oh no, okay, yeah, you're crying because don't weep, I can fix that. Or we can buy a new one. If I can change that, then don't weep is a good thing. Yeah. It is something to say. It's like, no, let's move on. Let's look at what's there. And there probably are appropriate times that we look, okay, no, you know what? Yes, that's pain. Yes, you have to grieve that. But look, let's look what we can do. Or let's look what God can do. And I think sometimes we're too quick to say, well, God can deal with that. We do have to grieve, but we grieve with hope.
Yeah, no, that's a great illustration. I think my 3-year-old sometimes something will happen, and he starts crying.
Right.
And like I want to be like, oh, hey, it's okay, it's okay. But he has to get some of those tears out. He has to experience that before he is willing to recognize and see, oh, it is going to be okay. Dad can do something about this.
Right.
And I think we see Jesus do that. I think in just that little word, right? He had compassion on her. Like, he probably didn't just go up to her emotionless and be like, hey, stop it. Like, he's probably demonstrating a true compassion and purpose.
Well, obviously the crowd saw that he had compassion. Mm-hmm. So was it in his eyes, in his voice?
Yeah, he didn't just go, hey, I have compassion on her, write that down.
He didn't say that. Obviously they saw that somehow. And how do we really enter in?
That's good. Well, verse 14, then he came up and he touched the bier.
Right, which he should not have done. That's unclean. A rabbi would never do.
It's like I only know of one.
Yeah, it is. A funeral bier is probably kind of a wicker basket, perhaps, or a stretcher kind of thing that the body would be.
Kind of the equivalent of the casket or whatever.
Yeah, but open, not closed.
So he touched the bier. The bearers stood still because they're like, what's...
Right, because they're carrying, it was, probably like a stretcher for people, I would imagine, one on each end. And they're like, what do you do?
This shouldn't happen.
This shouldn't happen.
But we can't do anything because we're holding it. We can't drop it.
Right, yeah.
And he said, young man, I say to you, arise.
Right.
Okay.
Now Elijah prayed 3 times to God, laid on the the widow of Zarephath's son, which is always kind of an interesting word picture.
Image, yes.
Elisha prays twice and God answers, and he speaks. Because he is God. He doesn't have to talk to somebody. He is God.
Yeah. So he says, young man, I say to you, arise.
Yeah.
Now this word, we can take it pretty much at face value, right? Go from lying down.
Right.
To standing up, right? Arise. I was talking with Dan, one of our other pastors here, and he's
teaching at St. Charles.
St. Charles.
Yeah.
And he said, like, is this, you say arise to somebody who is sleeping. You say arise to somebody who's just lying down. You don't say arise to somebody who's dead.
Right.
Unless you can do something
about it. And Jesus, as we've seen, always asks what's impossible without him.
That's good. That's such a good
Everything
point.
is impossible without him. And that's, he calls us to that. What can we do without?
Yeah. And he doesn't ask questions that he's not capable of answering or demonstrating.
Right.
Verse 15, and the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother.
Right.
So, I mean, here he's demonstrating, like, he was dead, now he's alive. He's demonstrating he's alive. He is speaking. And Jesus gave him to his mother. What is happening there?
Well, I love that Jesus' whole focus is on her, the suffering.
Yeah.
And helping her. Like
our focus is on, hey, there's a dead dude and now he's not dead.
Right.
Yeah.
But it looks at the mother. And it's, her, because it's the widow and the orphan. This is who we do. It's not just only the death of her son, but the death of her future, perhaps death of her dreams, death of just freedom that she had. There's probably a lot of other things she was having to grieve.
Death of even all of her good memories leading up to that, because now they're associated with this very, very painful one.
Right. And she's, so, again, Jesus, the widow and the orphan, this was our call.
Yeah.
Where is there that there is death, emptiness, that Jesus needs to bring life to?
Yeah.
And that how do we be the bearers of that? We are the carriers of the life of Christ.
Yeah, no, it's great.
We can be instruments of the resurrection power in someone's life.
And I think before we had kids, I read a story like this, like, oh, that's really cool. And, I think about the joy that we had when James and when Bren, when they were born. I can't imagine the loss, to lose one of them, and then the experience of having them given back to us.
Right.
And that's what Jesus does. That's the life that he calls us to. That's the life that he gives us.
And the hope. We live in the now and the not yet.
Yeah.
I mean, rare examples. We have a couple in our county of people who come back from the dead. But not yet. Mm-hmm. It's the not yet, that there is the hope. And, we've experienced that. Gave over my son into the arms of, the last time I held him, I was giving him into the arms of Jesus. But I know I will see him.
Yeah.
I know that Jesus is going to hand him to me in a moment. And that's the hope. That, okay, we may have to wait 20, 30, 40, 70 years for that to happen, but it will happen. He is the resurrection and the life.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And we see here then their response.
Yeah.
Fear seized them all. They glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." It's interesting here. There's a few things that stick out to me. They didn't say, God has risen a person from the dead, right? Their focus is on the prophet and God being with his people. But this first word in verse 16, fear, seized them all. Now we hear this in church, church speak, fear of God, fear of the Lord, right? Beginning of wisdom. We see that in Proverbs. What does this word mean?
Yeah, it's a holy reverence. It's an awe. It's like, okay, there's something greater than us that's beyond us that we don't quite understand, capable of more. It's not necessarily that they're fearful for their life, that they're in danger. They're like, okay, this is inexplicable, and I don't know what could happen. And I'm trying to sort out, what does this really mean for me?
Yeah.
Right? And there's kind of a sense of awe, but I can't live. The fear is I can't stay the same.
Yeah.
I can't live as I have been. I have to change. I have to respond well. And I can't be who I once was. I have to be different.
Yeah, the mental picture that I get, or at least the connection I'm making here, is think of Isaiah, where he is in the presence of the throne room, the presence of God. He sees the angels, and his immediate response is, holy, 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 right? Woe is me. And that there's a fearfulness there, but it is that reverence, that holy, that recognition of the holy, the recognition of kind of the otherness of who Jesus is and what he's doing.
That we have to respond to.
Yeah.
You can't just dismiss, because okay, if I dismiss this is not going to be good if I dismiss it.
So anyway, the crowd, I can only, it says it seized them all. So both crowds, right? The crowd that was grieving, the crowd that was exciting. There's probably this just stillness and quiet. I can imagine what the scene was. They glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us. God has visited his people." And so why is this what they're proclaiming, they're saying?
Well, I think it's an allusion back to, this is like Elijah and Elisha. This is there really hasn't been anything like that since then. Goes back. God is they knew this is not normal. This is not human. This is God somehow. No, they were not fully understanding Jesus is God. They were he's sent from God. He's got the power of God, the anointing of God.
Yeah.
But they will get to that. But that illusion that God is back visiting us like Elijah and Elisha were visiting our people then. Yeah,
no, that's good. All right, and then we hit verse 17. It says, "And this report about him spread through the whole Judea and all of the surrounding country." So there's brilliance here, right? You have two crowds, the grieving crowd, the crowd that was excited, that was going with him.
Right, which we are part of sometimes. Sometimes we're the grieving crowd, sometimes they're... we need Jesus.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've seen Jesus done that, and Jesus unites us together, and that's called the church.
Yeah,
God's people together.
Well, and then they take this, what they've seen, and it spreads, right? It doesn't just stay with them. It's not like he just did this with the family in the house by themselves. This report goes out. Jesus is up to something. God is up to something.
Yeah. And I think this is our call. That's our call to spread the kingdom of life. The kingdom of light is here. What is God up to, and what is he doing? And I tend to think why maybe we even don't go to this passage too often.
Yeah.
Because there is a sense, this is the response. This is our call to go into a dark, lifeless, dead world, community, neighborhood, and be the light of Jesus to them. And that's a heavy responsibility. Yeah. That's our responsibility.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, hey, you want to tease next week a little bit?
Yeah, Jesus stilling the storm.
Yeah.
So we're all in storms. Our country's in a storm. People are in a storm. And so how do we find stillness with Jesus in the midst of the storms?
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Terry. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for just kind of tracking with us in this story, this Knowing Jesus deep dive project that we are doing. Next week we'll be in week 14, and look forward to catching you again then.
God bless.